Broadcasting from the 72nd floor of First Canadian Place in the heart of Toronto's financial district, this is #Finance, the podcast that profiles innovative entrepreneurs and thought leaders operating in the public markets. Presented to you by the CSE, the Exchange for Entrepreneurs.
And we're back with yet another episode of #Finance. And today I am joined with not just a guest, but this is actually going to be a co-hosted segment with my good colleague, Barrington Miller. Thank you, Barrington, for joining.
No, thank you for having.
And our esteemed guest today, Rana Vig, which is, I guess you are both the president, the CEO, and the secretary, and perhaps even the janitor of Blue Lagoon Resources, based on what I've seen on your business card and online. And we're going to talk to you about a lot of stuff today because not only are you the CEO of this company that's listed on the CSE, BLLG, but the company itself is not your first time at the rodeo. So thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And not the first time at the rodeo by a long shot. We're in 2020, and as we discussed today, you've been doing business on the CSE and as a public markets entrepreneur since 2010. So maybe just let's start with where we're at today with Blue Lagoon. Open the market on the 72nd floor, First Canadian Place, the CSE HQ. Tell us about what the company does, why you're different in the mining exploration space, and some of the stuff you guys are really jazzed about.
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me here. Beautiful offices, by the way. It's incredible. It's a real honor for me, in particular, to be here because I started in this business only about 10 years ago in the capital markets, and the CSC was really one of the first organizations that I was introduced to. And I just fell in love with the people instantly. They were always great and very helpful and friendly and very solution oriented, which is very important for entrepreneurs like me. Blue Lagoon, Resources just got listed just a handful of months ago, last year, after coming off of a pretty big cannabis deals. I thought, I've been involved mostly in mining in the capital markets, and I had this inkling that mining has got to come back at some point, and I was betting that gold would. So we started Blue Lagoon Resources with some gold properties, and we're working hard to advance those. So I think 2020 is going to be an exciting year with gold starting to come back and hitting 5- and 7-year highs.
Well, when we're talking with a lot of the miners in Toronto, at least everyone's saying, mining's back, baby, mining's coming back. So we're looking forward to not only VRIC taking place in Vancouver near the end of the month, but we also have PREDAC coming up on February 20th, and PDAC, which is the big show, March 1st to March 4th. So hopefully Blue Lagoon will be able to make a splash. I didn't want to say it, but I had to. I didn't want to say it, but there it is.
What's behind the name? I assume it has nothing to do with the movie that came out in 1980 with Brooke Shields.
No. Honestly, there's nothing really in particular with the name. We were just sitting around one time, just brainstorming some ideas, and actually it was my wife who came out with Blue Lagoon, and I learned a long time ago, never argue with your wife. So she said, "Hey, Blue Lagoon sounds like a really great name." I said, "I love it. Let's go with it."
That might be the best advice we've had on this podcast. Okay. Well, let's just talk a little more about the mining sector because, as you said, you're based in Vancouver, correct?
Correct.
And obviously that whole city and that where I used to live for 9 years is heavily indebted, and we're with the mining industry being the backbone of the capital markets there. But Blue Lagoon, gold, you mentioned the macro forces, sort of the gold price. Is there anything more about this story, about where it's located or perhaps the team or other influences on the value creation here?
Well, I think that, my approach is about figuring out how to increase value, but more from an entrepreneurial side. Every business I've been in many different verticals. My goal always is to be the dumbest guy in the room. I want to surround myself with very, very smart people and then help execute, on a plan. And my strategy is with the mining sector, because I'm not a geologist, I'm not a mining engineer. So, I look at it from a different perspective. So with these properties, I tried to pick up something that I felt was undervalued, and that we could bring something to the table and advance it, because I believe that's how you increase obviously shareholder value. And the other thing was I was trying to figure out what kind of properties can I get in a safe jurisdiction. So we have our properties are in BC as well as the Northwest Territories. What can I do to continue to keep the investor engaged? Often my experiences with mining properties, they're in some remote area where you can only work in a very short window. window, in the summer, and then the rest of the time you're kind of sitting around. Maybe if I was a geologist or a mining engineer or something, I'd be excited about reading all sorts of reports and things. But because I'm not, my sort of strategy is how do I keep the investor engaged? So we have this property, the Palair property, which is a couple hours away from Williams Lake. It's a 10 high-grade vein system, a beautiful property that we can had past producing underground workings, and we can go in there and advance that, and we can work that in the summer. And then we have this Northwest Territories property, which we can work in the winter. So we just picked that up recently. In fact, we're going to start drilling there in mid to late February. So with that, and then by the way, that's the gold side of it. And then we have another property that's a little bit of an earlier stage that we got in the pipeline. But then I continued to look for other opportunities. And a few weeks ago, a fantastic opportunity came to me in the magnesium space. And people were kind of wondering, well, why are you looking at magnesium? Well, it looks like a great value, a great deal from a business perspective. And it's something that I can go in there. And this company has an amazing technology. All that's missing is money. So if I can bring money to the table and help these scientists advance that project, then if gold, doesn't decide to, continue to rise in the short term, I believe in the long term it will. But if in the short term, if it doesn't do that, then I've got a second play that I can make work and you
have optionality,
exactly, and help increase value for the shareholders.
So for our audience, listeners, and viewers, we were talking off camera, and we just about the whole mining sector, and we were talking about shells and how a number of years ago shells we couldn't give them away. They were just all over the place. And then there was a little industry that popped up called cannabis, which I know you have a little bit of background in. How has cannabis helped you and helped the sector over the past 3, 4, or 5 years?
Well, it's interesting. The cannabis, I think, saved a lot of us, right? I mean, I got involved in the business, like, as I mentioned, about 10 years ago. It started in mining, and it was like an incredibly negative experience for me, right? Because I got involved. I think
it was a negative experience for a lot of people.
For everybody, probably a lot of people. Yeah, I put a lot of money, 7 figures into the mining sector, which within 6 months were worth like nothing, right? And then so you had all these companies, and I kept hearing, hey, it's going to turn. Every year it's going to turn, right? And eventually, there was a point, as we were talking earlier off camera, there was a point where we were saying you couldn't give these companies away, right? And then enter, cannabis, and everything changed. And I was very fortunate last year. I was able to bring, to the CSC 2 of the biggest deals that were done, Curaleaf as well as Harvest. So all that capital that got injected. I mean, that's the venture market, right? That's the industry, right? People get excited about something, and everybody wants to jump in. And so I think cannabis really changed everything. Now that industry is maturing, right? Obviously, we've seen a big pullback. The hope, of course, is that money doesn't want to sit around, right? So money doesn't want to sleep. So hopefully that money's going to come back into the mining sector. I think that's what we're all betting on.
Well, you mentioned something really, really interesting, and maybe you didn't know it, but you were talking about investors, and you were talking about money going in to cannabis and where that money was coming from. It's coming from the retail market. It's coming from young investors, and it's the investors who, there's a sexy new industry. They put money in, valuations were up, they made a ton of money. That's not really how traditional investing works. And what we've been trying to do, at least when we go around and talk, is tell people, hey, diversify a little bit. And so now one of the challenges that we're seeing is getting that new investor, that younger investor, and bringing them into mining, bringing them into more traditional sectors. Do you see that as a challenge? Do you see that as just a natural progression of the way this economy is flowing? What's your What's your opinion on that?
I think that's an interesting question. I think that is a challenge, right? Because as I look as a relatively new person in this industry, as I look at it and I see the venture market and these junior companies, right? And who is actually investing in these and who was investing in this? And I think in the last 10 years, I see a lot has changed in my opinion, right? I mean, with the ETFs, with electronic trading, with all these discount brokerages, a lot has changed in the industry with social media, and I don't know what the answer to that is, and but I do believe that is a challenge for the industry, and hopefully someone a lot smarter than me is thinking about these situations and how do you market to that younger generation who is predominantly relying on Facebook or Instagram, and how do you engage them in
podcast called #Finance,
right? So I think that's a question that I think that needs to be really thought through, and hopefully the industry leaders are doing something about that, and I don't know.
Interesting. Oh, and so I appreciate all that, and I think one thing I'd like to kind of steer the conversation towards while we get to the end is I want to know more about you as an entrepreneur and some of your influences and some of the things that bring you inspiration and motivate you. I mean, you've had a very diverse career, and you're obviously driven into many different sectors and things. But what are your truths, or what are the things you come back to as principles that you like to execute on every day as an entrepreneur?
I think, I have had a very diverse background. I've been involved in many different verticals. I think what always I kind of fall back on is people, right? Is to make sure that I'm working with the absolute best that I can find in whatever industry that I get involved with, because ultimately I think that if you are honest and straightforward with people and you build good relationships, they're the ones who are going to help you build whatever that you're building. It's not about me. What can I do? As I mentioned earlier, I truly aim to be the dumbest guy in the room. Every time I sit down, I want the smartest people, surrounded by me. So that's something that I've always done all my life in every business that I've been involved with, and I think that's what allows me to shine, to bring projects forward to increase their value.
No, I agree with that premise. I mean, I think some people who have bigger egos would say, "Well, I want to be the smartest guy in the room, and everyone has to do what I say," and you lose the ability to basically crowdsource ideas and best execution and everything from your team, because you're not, as you say, surrounding yourself with the best thinkers in the industry. Right?
And I think that probably one of my greatest strengths is knowing what I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, I think that's very important. And I try to tell my kids that all the time, right? I mean, I don't know everything, right? In fact, I'm bad at most things, right? I just need to be good at one thing. Right?
I saw a good meme. It's a pie chart of here's what you think you know, or here's what you know. It's a very thin slice. And then here's what you think you know. It's a little bit of more of a slice. And that's about a fraction of a % of the pie. And the rest this is the universe.
Yes.
So
yes.
You're never going to have perfect knowledge. Well, that's cool. And so as far as Blue Lagoon's concerned and what you're up to, what are the best ways to connect and follow you and the company?
We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. I'm very accessible. I answer every call, every email from investors, big or small.
Yeah.
So whether it's email or my phone, it's all on the website. So I'm happy to connect with anyone.
And are you going to be at PDAC this year?
Not as a presenter or as a company, but we'll be there connecting.
I think we'll find something for you to do.
Yeah, make sure you come by our booth, and we'll showcase you a little bit.
It'll be my pleasure.
Cool. Well, with that in mind, I know you got a meeting to run to, so we'll wrap it. But if you're watching today on CSE TV, please subscribe down below. We'd love to have you as a regular viewer. We get great guests like Rana twice a week. We do these podcasts. And if you're listening on #Finance, which is on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google, Apple, anywhere you can get a podcast, basically, please subscribe. Once again, you'll get this in your inbox or on your account twice a week. We'd love to have you. If you like that Barrington and I both hosted the show today, let us know. Just send us a note. We're trying all sorts of new stuff this year. We like doing one-on-ones, two-on-ones, whatever it is. It's all about creating good content for you, the listener. And Rana, thanks again, and safe travels.
Thank you.
We're social here at the CSE. Each and every day we'll keep you up to date on trending topics that investors are talking about, such as cannabis, blockchain, and esports. Follow daily CSE news and events on your favorite social media platform: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You'll find exclusive interviews with leading entrepreneurs from a variety of industries, thought-provoking stories from across the world of finance, and updates from CSE events taking place worldwide. Join the conversation and connect with us today.